is Phil. For those of you that don't know me, I am somebody that just absolutely loves pizza. About 3 years ago for Christmas, somebody very special to my family and to me, my wife's Nana, for Christmas, knowing how much I love pizza, went out and got me a pizza oven. I was extremely nervous, thinking I'm going to mess up a food that I love so much. But what I found over time is that really pizza making has become like an art form for me. It's become a massive hobby of mine. You've seen posts likely if you follow me on Facebook or if you've connected with my Ziccaroni's Facebook or Instagram pages. And I've had enough people ask me over the last 3 years, how do you make pizzas, that I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make a video about it. And so my lovely wife, LB, has agreed to film. And so we're going to dive into this. And my plan is to really give you a step-by-step process of how to make pizza. I think sometimes whenever you hear pizza making and you're not talking about just like the instant packs, it can be very intimidating, but it's really not. It comes down to some basic ingredients, and after a while, it just kind of becomes like clockwork for you. So I'm going to talk about what we're working with here first. We have a few different ingredients. We have active dry yeast. This is going to be really important to make sure that the dough is going to rise for you. We have water, we have salt, but I want to get into the flour. The flour is something that's very important to the pizza making process here. A lot of times people are going to use all-purpose flour, which is fine, but if you really want that good, crisp pizza crust, you want to go with the 00 flour. 00 flour, King Arthur's, is the one that I go with the most frequently, mainly because it's the cheapest, but it's also great quality. Why do the 00 flour? It's because this flour, compared to others, has a lower amount of proteins in it. And so with that lower amount of protein in it, it allows the dough to hydrate more. It makes it easier to be able to spread out and then to give you that crisp flavor. That being said, I also like to mix a little bit of just your regular all-purpose flour in. By doing that, you give some more structure to your crust, and you also save a couple bucks. This 00 pizza flour, it's 3 pounds for $6.99. So if you can blend and mix and match a little bit, you can definitely do that. Let's jump into the pizza making though. First, I want to talk about my ratio for the flour. For a good pizza crust, and we're going to operate as if we're making 3 pizzas here. A lot of this stuff is based off of a recipe that my wife found on Pinterest, and over time I've just kind of modified a little bit. What I do first is I get 2 cups of the 00 flour, put it into the bowl, and then I get about 1.5 cups of the all-purpose flour, just enough to give it some good structure to work with. Put that in the bowl, let it sit there. Then before we do anything else, I'm going to get out the active dry yeast, and I'm going to get 2 tablespoons of warm water. Most recipes are going to tell you that you need 1/8 of a teaspoon for this amount of pizza. I go up and I use 1/4 teaspoon. I find that this makes the pizza a little chewier, without losing the crispness that you're going to get with like a Neapolitan type of crust. After that, we're just going to let this sit here for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. In the meantime, though, we're going to look at this flour, and we're going to start to add some water to it, and we're going to dive right into it. There are some people that like to use a mixer, which I think is fine, but I find that the best pizza that I make is the kind that I either mix with a wooden spoon or honestly with my hand. So I'm gonna add some water here. The amount of water in here is 1.5 cups. Pour it right in. And then I'm just gonna slowly start to go around and around and around in it. You wanna make sure you get the edges because you don't want to lose too much of the flour just coating the sides. So try to get it in. And then you can see here, it looks like there's a lot of dry spots, but really as you are stirring more, and if you bake, you know this already, as you bake more or as you stir more, this is gonna get coated. We're not gonna make quite a shaggy dough yet, but we're gonna start the process of getting there. So you can see now we got the parts pressed in, a little bit stuck to the wooden spoon. That's pretty normal. If you're somebody and you're worried about getting your hands dirty, a simple tip that I like to use is I'll put my hands under the sink for water, just as an easy way to make sure that it doesn't stick. I don't really mind getting my hands dirty too much because, well, you know, I wash them, so it works out pretty well. And I keep my ring in my pocket, that way I don't get it all doughy and yucky. So easy way too is just to kind of run your hand back and forth through it, make sure it's coating, picking up all the excess flour that you can. Now, if you look at it closely here, I'm going to ask LB to come a little closer. You can see it's not super liquidy. It's not really dry either up top. You flip it over, it looks a little dry right now, but that's going to get corrected in about 20 minutes whenever we add in the yeast. So for now, what I'm going to do, though, is we're going to do an initial rise. This rise is going to be about like 20 minutes, and then we're going to come back to it. We're going to add some yeast, add some salt, and we're going to keep on the pizza making process. So set your timers and pause the video and come back in 20 minutes. Okay, so it's been 20 minutes now. First thing we're gonna wanna do is uncover the dough. And so you look in here, you can see it's a little dry, not quite as shaggy, and that's okay because what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take our yeast here that we put the 2 tablespoons of warm water in. You don't want it to be too hot because it'll kill the yeast. And obviously you don't want to be cold because then it won't activate. Once you have it in the bowl and it's waited 20 minutes, I usually take a fork and just kind of scrape the inside a little bit just to make sure the water and the yeast get mixed in. And then just pour it in over the mixture. But that's not enough. You'll also want to make sure that this crust has some flavor. If the crust doesn't have flavor, I think we can all agree it's some pretty crummy pizza. And so I like to take, most recipes for 3 pizzas will say 2 teaspoons. I really like flavor in the crust, so don't tell my wife, although she's on video recording right now, it'll tell me this is cheesy later. I like to use 3 teaspoons, adds a little bit more. Pour it over, and then you have this mixture in here. What we're gonna do next is, again, we're gonna get our hands dirty, go in, and we're just gonna start squeezing the dough a little bit at a time. Because what we want to happen is for the yeast and the salt to completely mix in with the dough. And so you just go little by little, squeeze, pinch, pinch, pinch. And then once it's pinched like that, you can just fold it over, pinch again, because we wanna make sure every single part of it gets coated. This is a process that'll take you a minute or so, but at the end of it, you're gonna get a much shaggier dough, which is good for that first real rise that we're gonna do here at the end to make sure that we're getting some good pizza crust instead of the stuff that, well, like the stuff that we're probably used to making whenever we get those instant packs. Those instant packs are good, but if you really wanna up your pizza making game, you know, we wanna take some different steps. Now at this point, I think it's probably been mixed in enough. What I like to do most of the time, pizzaiolas, the pizza chefs will save this for the second rise. I like to do this the first time too. And so I'm gonna ask LB to just zoom in over the top. I like to get it into a specific kind of like turn ball. So I'll pull a little bit of the side out like this. Then I will turn the bowl. I'll do it again and again and again. And then I like to flip it. You're gonna see here, it's a little loose in my hands right now, and set it down. By setting it down like this, it's gonna help that first initial rise with the yeast. Again, you know, I like to use a little bit more yeast. I think it adds stuff for the texture. Also can sometimes, depending on if you get the quantity added right, it'll sometimes end up getting you a little bit more extra crust for your pizzas, so you can have, sometimes, you know, this recipe is made for 3. Sometimes if I hit it just right, it gets 4. Once you mix it in, cover the dough, set a 1-hour timer, and in 1 hour, come back and we'll get ready for that second part. So go ahead, pause the video, do what you gotta do. I'm gonna go wash my hands. So I just took off the cover after having it sit for an hour, and if you look here, you can see it's still pretty sticky. You could work with this. This is totally fine, but I think for the sake of what we're doing, I'm really just gonna show you how to just add some more flour and keep it simple. I've got a 1/4 cup measurement here. Really any small measuring cup will be fine. Just enough to add on. I'm using all-purpose flour for 2 reasons. 1, it's the cheaper of the 2 flours. 2, since it has more protein in it, it's gonna make it, it's gonna give it some more structure.
So once you put the extra flour in to soften it up, you're really just gonna kind of fold it over side by side. I'm gonna have LB come in a little bit closer here to kind of see what I'm doing here to kind of press in the flour. We don't want it to be too sticky again because, you know, we're not trying to have it stick to the bowl whenever we go to take it out. So I'm just gonna throw it around the outside too to coat it up a little bit, get it nice and even, or at least as even as it can be here. And so the next thing we're gonna do, we have our first rise done. It's sat an hour. Now we gotta get ready for the second rise. And so what we'll do is we'll take the bowl here, pull out a little bit from the side, not too tight, but we're gonna fold it in toward the middle. Turn the bowl again, grab some out, fold it, grab the side, fold it again, third time, fold it. Now for now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna flip it over and just leave it there for a couple seconds because I want to take you over to the second bowl. We're transferring bowls now, getting it ready for this second rise. And so just get some cooking spray. You can use oil if you want. Spray the inside. You want to spray it pretty liberally because you don't want it to stick. We come back to this bowl and we gather it, we pick it up, and we want the seam to be down. We want the seam to be down because we want the rise to push up the dough to help it expand better. At this point, you can let it sit for 2 hours, or you can do what I do. I like to let it sit overnight. I think that it gives it a nicer flavor. I think it helps it expand more and you get more out of it. So what I'll end up doing is covering the top first with some plastic wrap and then throwing a towel on top of it. And then to slow down the fermentation, or to slow down that second rise, I'm gonna stick it in the fridge. This slows the yeast down, gets a little sleepy if you would, and just helps make sure that this process goes along a little bit more smoothly. I find that also by having it sit in the fridge, it makes it a little less sticky. And so since we have that problem already after the first rise, this should resolve it here. Some people will tell you to just let it sit the whole time until you're ready to be used. I push back on that because what I like to do is every few hours. Now, obviously, I'm gonna go to bed here in case you can't tell from the window behind me. It's pretty late right now, but every few hours, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do that same thing where I'm gonna pull out the sides, roll, and then flip it over, set the seam as down. This is gonna cause the glutens to continue to develop better, have stronger ties to it, making it a little bit more elastic, so that whenever we go to spread it out into the individual pizzas, it's gonna be a lot easier. So again, now that it's in here and it's ready for that second rise, I'm gonna put some plastic wrap over the top, cover it with a cloth, stick it in the fridge, and we're gonna pick it up again in the morning. It's morning, so time to go ahead and check out the dough, take off the towel, and then take off the plastic wrap. If you look inside the bowl, it doesn't really look like it grew too much, so that cold fermentation from overnight, you know, kind of did its job. It slowed it down. But we wanted to pick up a little bit because I want pizza tonight. And so, LB, if you want to go ahead and just come in over the top again, we're going to help it with the fermentation process. We're going to help it with the gluten process by turning and folding again. So you just saw I pulled the one side out and pulled it over the middle. I'm going to do the same thing here. Turn it again, pull it one more time. And now we have that seam again. So we're just going to flip it over. And then we're gonna cover it and just leave it like that for a little bit. I'll probably check in on it in about an hour or so. And if everything is good to go from there, I'm gonna start to divide it and turn it into the different dough balls that we'll use for the pizza. So see you in a little while. So now we're done with the big rises. So then our next step is to start making pizza balls. Go ahead and uncover your dough, and you can see right here it's risen a little bit. It's still not as much as usual, but that could have just been because of the cold fermentation I did, and I haven't been doing that as much recently. And also because I've been doubling it because I've been having people over. Take it out, and we're not going to use that bowl anymore because what we're going to do next is store it somewhere, or at least I'm going to store it somewhere else. You can use a plate if you want to, and then put saran wrap over it, or I have a proofing bin, and I'll use that, spray it down, that way nothing sticks to it. You want to first spread out the dough, that way you get like a kind of like a log, and then this pizza recipe, like I said before, it's going to be good for 3 pizzas, I think. Could probably get a 4th, but I really don't want to have like smaller pizzas. I'd rather have 3 large ones. And so I have a dough splitter here, 1, and 2 and 3. Just like before where we did the turn method to get the big dough ball for the proofing, we're going to do the same thing here, but for 3 smaller ones. One thing you can do if you're worried about it sticking to the countertop, a little tip that I like to do, powder or just lightly dust your countertop with some flour. Don't really need to do that on this one. And so what you'll see me do here first is take our first of the 3 dough balls, and the same thing as before, pull out a little bit on the side, not too hard, because I don't want to rip the dough. Bring it over. Same on the other side. Same up top and behind. Then we're gonna flip it over like this so it's smooth. And we're gonna drag it across the countertop. So I usually take my pinkies first at the base, connect, and then bring them all, and then just slowly drag it back. And it's important that you can see it actually drag. Then turn it and do the same thing again and again and again and again. What this does is it gets it nice and smooth for you. It also helps make sure that it's like not too sticky for you, and it's you'll be able to spread it out into the dough later. So after the first one's done, just put it right in your proofing bin for me, or you may just use a plate instead. Like I said, totally fine. That's what I did for the first couple years of Zeccheronis, and you can see I'm also a little bit faster with doing these things, so it does get easier as the time goes on. Pull, and you can see it gets smoother too as we keep going. Really, you want it so that whenever you put your finger on it, you don't find anything sticking to your finger anymore. If it's still sticking, you got to keep pulling and pulling. And now it's nice and smooth. So there's a second one ready to go. And the reason why I'm using a proofing bin in this case is because I am going to have it sit out a little longer. And I should have said this before, and I don't think I did. During the second proofing, I had you put saran wrap on top. Didn't really explain why. One of the big reasons for that is the airtight seal that you want to try to make is going to prevent the dough from drying out and then getting this weird kind of like crusty feeling on top, which is, you can still cook the pizza, it'll still taste good, but it'll create like a little bit of a funky texture. And if we can avoid that, that would be ideal here. So again, 3 dough balls are done. Next thing for you to do, like I said, I greased this up, that way it doesn't stick. So I'm gonna seal it nice airtight, and whenever it's pizza time, we'll get ready to see what we do next. Enough time has passed, it's time to get ready to make some pizza. So I'm gonna take the lid off the proofing box, and if you look inside, they've risen, just not as much as you would usually like. One of the most likely reasons for this is the temperature. I keep the house a little colder in the summer than other people do, and that's going to impact the yeast and its ability to rise, but it's still enough to be able to rise and make some good pizza. So first thing, this is a really easy tip that I like to do as well, is I like to lay out parchment paper. It's going to make sure that if you're using like a pizza peel, it's going to prevent the dough from sticking to it. If you don't use the parchment paper, just on your pizza peel or on your island or whatever, throw down some flour, and then I like to use some cornmeal as well. This is also where, like, if you are a fan of New York style pizza, you like that like crisp texture of it, you like that crunch on the bottom, really good for that. You're gonna sprinkle some on the parchment paper, and it's really just like a personal preference how much you want. That's probably a little more than I need, but it's gonna be okay. And then we're gonna take out one of the pizza dough balls. Then you're just gonna kind of slowly pull it out a little bit. We're stretching the glutens here. The reason why we've been having it rise for so long is because we're trying to make sure that we're increasing the elasticity. Then we're gonna just slowly kind of pull, and then if you wanna use the bottom or use the island to kind of help balance, do that. And you just keep on rotating it and rotating it until you have a pretty good circle like this. Then lay it down flat. I'm gonna have LB come in a little closer too. And then just kind of start to push down a little bit on. This is gonna get rid of any of the gas bubbles that are still in there. If you are somebody that you like the bubbles on the crust, that's okay. Just usually you don't want it in the middle of the pizza, just press it out a little bit more toward the side. I want to do one more with LB recording because I want to make sure it's clear that you can see how I'm spreading out the dough, because that was one of the most intimidating parts for me. So again, I'm throwing some cornmeal down here, and then I'm getting another dough ball, and then just pulling out from the middle a little bit. We've got our kids laughing in the background, but that's okay. That's part of the pizza making process too, is managing the family. We're just gonna pull a little bit out the sides and just slowly rotate and go around and around and around. So just a little tug, not enough to tear. Now, one last thing I do want to discuss. What happens if something happens and there's a tear? That's really tear because it's elastic. If that happens, it's not the end of the world, but it is something that you have to address. So usually what you do is you just pinch a spot and you go over it and you pull it up over the hole and you press it in. And that'll prevent any sort of holes from happening and the sauce leaking out in your oven and creating all sorts of other problems. So from here, I'm just gonna spread this one out into another pizza dough and then I'll do the last one. Next part of the video, you're gonna see me start to add things on. In the meantime, go ahead and preheat your oven. All right, it's time to get ready to make some pizza, which means we gotta heat up the oven. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the grill because this oven takes about 20 minutes to preheat. And so with preheating your oven, the whole goal is to get it nice and hot. That way, whenever the pizza gets in, it's able to cook relatively quickly. You're able to get caramelization on the crust, on the cheese, all that good stuff. Now, this pizza oven, they no longer make this version, but I know that there are other similar ones, about 89, 90 bucks available on Amazon. And it's going to get the temperature up to somewhere in the ballpark of like 560 to 600. That would be like ideal for the amateur pizzaiolo, the amateur pizza makers like us. I know that there are the Uni ones that are like $900 and will get your pizza oven up to like 900 degrees, which is nice too, but you know, we don't necessarily need it that hot right now for what we're doing right now. So again, this is going to get up to about 560 to 600. If you don't have one of these, that's okay too. Just go to your oven, your convection oven inside your house, turn it on to, I don't know, somewhere around like 400. If you're comfortable cranking it up a little bit higher than that, that's okay too. It's just going to take a little longer to cook and to get that caramelization that you want. But otherwise, let's go ahead and do what I said I was going to do before. Let's go in and let's decorate some pizzas. So let's get this pizza ready. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get some tomato sauce. Now, we spent a lot of time working on this dough, and so instead of using like the ragu sauce, we're going to use some nicer sauce today. We're going to use sauce that I made. And it was made with these. These aren't your regular tomatoes. These are San Marzanos. They're called San Marzano tomatoes because of where they're from in Italy. And they have this oblong shape. You use these to make some great pizza sauce. You blanch them, you get the skin off, seeds out if you can, and then blend it into this kind of a sauce. Now, I had used some tomatoes that weren't totally ripe yet, but I didn't want the birds to eat them, so I picked them a little early. So it looks a little oranger than usual. But you know what? I tasted it. It tastes great. And so, like I said, we're going to use it. First, we're going to spoon some in here to the middle, and we're just going to start to spread it out a little by little. Most pizzas, whenever you make them at home, you want to leave like a pretty decent amount of space between the edge of the crust and where you put the sauce down. This type of crust, a Neapolitan crust that we've been making, you don't have to do that because what's going to end up happening is as it's cooking, it's going to push everything to the center. And so while it's still good to leave a little bit of space, it's not as much as the typical homemade pizzas here. Now that the sauce is down, our next step is going to be to throw on some cheese. You can use mozzarella, you can use Italian style. If you want that really nice, like caramelized looking cheese, you're going to want to use a like high fat cheese or high moisture mozzarella. This Italian style cheese that we just got from Walmart works great too. Just go ahead and coat it on. You want to be generous with the cheese here. So go ahead and grab a little bit more, giving it that nice ooey gooey taste that we like whenever we bite into a good pizza. We can add a little more too. Then we're going to get into the toppings. Now, I'm going to show you today just how to make a classic pepperoni pizza, and so that's what this is going to be. Little tip that I like to do is pre-cook your pepperonis. So throw them on a skillet, throw them on the pan for a little bit. That way you get them a little bit extra crispy for those ovens that aren't hitting the 900 temperatures that I talked about in the last part of the video. So we'll just go ahead and put them around. Well, we want to load it up, but we don't want to overload it. If you overload a pizza with toppings, it's going to make the middle of it dense. It's going to get the middle too wet, and it's not going to cook properly, and then that's how you get a really droopy pizza, which is, it's not fun for anybody at that point. So as we add on these pepperonis, we just try to make sure, there's enough on there that they taste delicious, and try to keep in mind the cutting angles that you're going to make with the pizza cutter. But It's a pretty straightforward, simple thing to do. So now while we wait just a few more minutes for the oven to heat up, we got this pizza done. Next, just to help out with the garnishing at the end, some people add it on at the end. I like to add it on beforehand. Add a little bit of fresh basil. Kind of brings up the color a little bit. Makes it look a little extra pretty for you. And gotta make sure they're all facing the same way. That's just a me thing though. So the pizza oven's heated up. This pizza's ready to go in. So you're gonna wanna use a pizza peel if you're using an outside oven, which is really just like a big spatula. Some people are intimidated by it. I definitely was the first time I did it. And it just takes some practice to get good with it. Using the parchment paper will be a really good way of making sure it doesn't stick on the peel, which is the #1 concern. And if that happens, there's other things you can do. But really, what you're going to do, and if you don't want to use the parchment paper, just use a lot of flour or cornmeal, and it should do the same thing. You want to get it in and then just kind of like push it off like that. And just slowly feed it in. And then set your timer for about like 3 minutes, because we're going to want to end up taking off the parchment paper. That way we can get a nice crisp inside. So see you in 3 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 3 minutes. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use tongs. So I don't want to touch the parchment paper by hand because it's inside a hot grill. Pull it out a little bit, and then if there's a little bit of space separating the pizza from the parchment paper, that's typically a sign that it's good enough to remove the parchment paper. So I'm going to slide the peel underneath, just slightly lift it up, and pull out the parchment paper and set it off to the side. Then I'm going to rotate the pizza to make sure it gets a nice even cooking in there. And by leaving it just on the stone, it's going to make sure it's a nice crispier crust. And so I'll leave it in there for about another 2-3 minutes to finish off. If I come out and after the 2-3 minutes it looks like it needs more time, I'll just add it 30-second increments at a time. And so in about 3 minutes, we're going to have a finished pepperoni pizza here. Okay, so let's check on this pizza. I ended up adding an extra minute or two just because I needed some more time. Ooh, and it looks good. So now we'll take it inside, let's cut it, and let's get ready to eat. Sign of good pizza is it doesn't make a crunch when you cut it, so let's see. Ooh. Any of you that like ASMR videos, I think it would be like in this. Whenever you take it out, it's important to let your pizza rest a little bit, just like you'd let a steak or a burger rest, because this just came out of a piping hot oven. So I think anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes would be good. I'm something like 10 degrees with it. So let's see, this is the first piece. Let's take a bite. You can see it's holding up firm.
Whoa.
Cheese is great, sauce ratio is spectacular, and you see that string of cheese? That's what you want. Pepperoni's crisp. Bon appetit. Thanks for watching.